I think a lot of what we're seeing in the world right now, we're seeing everyday men and women, all of us, even all of us right here, we're coming up with ideas to effectuate the end game. And then we're being fortunate enough to run into people that are willing to say, well, I guess we can try that. I've never done it before, but okay. Abundance works on both sides. It's not only the person that creates the idea, it's being a business owner or a manager that can receive a different way of doing it. That's how we keep abundance moving. It's not enough if I give you the idea. You've got to be willing to try it.
This is the Impossible Podcast, an exploration of stories that broke convention, set new standards, smashed glass ceilings, and redefined the notion of what's possible.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ashley Miles, CEO and founder of Franklin West, president of New York Women in Communications, and mother to Mila and Holland. I'm a game changer, builder, and scaler of top consumer media and entertainment companies, and dear friends with the amazing Megan Rokosh.
And welcome to Impossible. Now, this is the podcast where we give you a seat at the table to uncover and learn from the incredible stories of people who have made the impossible possible.
From professional athletes to world-renowned DJs and musicians to global pop artists to movers and shakers in business, we are constantly scouring our networks for the most uplifting, real and raw stories to share with you. And we're so excited that you're here to join us.
And we are joined by someone today who's a close, dear friend of mine, and I have zero doubt will be one of the biggest speakers in the world in very short order, Raegan Burton. Raegan is an incredible human being who has an amazing background in advertising, and she's a culturalist. So after 15 years in the ad community, she actually ended up being a lecturer of culture at the University of Florida and has gone on to speak and grace some of the largest stages in that industry. And I have no doubt many, many more industries to come. She has a very, very exciting future pursuing her PhD as well. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about that. Raegan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm really interested in us starting at the beginning, if you're okay with that. The purpose of this podcast is to really give people a background and the raw, real stories of how many people like yourself really started their careers. So talk to us about your upbringing and how it shaped your ambition and your drive and your ability to achieve the amazing things that you have.
It's interesting. My life started in a small town. I'm from Goldsboro, North Carolina. That is in the eastern part of the state. It's very country, but it has a beachy vibe to it too, because we're literally a hop, skip, and a jump from the coast. And I grew up with both sides of my family, really being born and raised there. So I grew up around a lot of family, actually. And I think what really shaped me the most coming from that particular part of the world is simplicity. I don't even think I really gave myself enough credit for how much that was going to influence a lot of the choices that I decided to make professionally and personally. But I really do exist in a place of simplicity. It's not that it's boring or it's not exciting. It's just that I can get from A to Z very quickly. And so that played a huge role. Also, it's a very faith-oriented part of the world. And faith in action, taking care of your neighbor, being supportive, being very much a person that can be counted on. That was something that was very much stressed where I was growing up. It was very much a place that your character is the biggest gift that you can give. It's not money, it's character. And so I was absolutely raised in a place that focused on character development. And last but certainly not least, I was kind of a nerdy kid. And I was very fortunate that at that time, a lot of the teachers that I had, they had trained at some of the best, universities in the nation. I mean, they're all sitting along I-40 in North Carolina. They had, bachelor's and master's in education from UNC Chapel Hill, Wake Forest, NC State, ECU, all of these amazing institutions that people rattle off now. And when you are in public school, and that is your entree into education, it really is on a different level. And it's very college prep, well before you understood that that's what you were taking on. And so for me to be a really academically gifted, kid, high schooler eventually, I was in accelerated, back then, what they called accelerated classes that eventually became AG and AP classes. And when that is who you are, I was very fortunate to be in a place where there was a public school system that could nurture that for free. My parents did not have to put me in private school or a special charter school. All they had to do was section me off with a bunch of teachers who had been hired specifically for that reason. And so all of those things played such a role in all the things, honestly, that I'm doing right now.
Wonderful. So I have to tell you, just looking at your profile and your career path, and you've been wildly successful throughout your career. What would you say are those key ingredients that have really led to your success? It's
a marathon, not a sprint. I know we hear that a lot, even in academic lingo, in sports, in our lives and financial, development, but it really is a marathon, not a sprint. I think that, again, where I came from culturally, being raised, I actually grew up in one of the first Black subdivisions in the suburbs where I'm from. And all these beautiful, really honestly, California ranch looking houses. And the interesting part about that is that all of these families grew over time. You got to see somebody from the time you're like, literally, we moved, my parents bought that house, built it and moved in it when I was literally, 6 months old. And so my whole life, literally till I left home to go to college, what did I see? I saw people, raising their families. And 1 year they have, this one vehicle, then the next year it's bigger. Then 5 years later, they build an addition to the house. So when you see that across the board, you don't have, or at least for me, I didn't have this thinking that it all happens just like that. I really, saw that life happens in a continuum. It's the long game, not the short game. So my success, quite honestly, the most beautiful success, honestly, that I've had in my career that is 100% aligned with my life purpose has honestly happened in the last 5 years. And it did not happen when I was 25. It did not happen. I didn't make the 30 under 30 list. I didn't make the 25 under 25. And I'll be honest with you, I'm glad I didn't. And I think a lot of that is, again, the value system that I came from: hard work, being ethical. I'm very proud of the fact that in my entire career, right now I have an LLC called Raegan Speaks. I had a different one, a decade ago. And I'm very proud of the fact that I've never cut one shady business deal to make anything happen. Whatever I say I'm going to pay you, you're going to get paid. If we need to go back and forth with what feels most comfortable to you, I can do that. Everybody gets treated well. You get shout outs, on Instagram, and you do things for me because you're still building your business too, even if you're contracting for me. And I think that also is the second thing. There are opportunities for everyone. You just have to be a person that doesn't mind helping to generate opportunities beyond yourself. You can't be selfish with it. And I think that has played a large part in why people choose to work with me, even in academia, because they know I'm not going to darken them. I'm not going to steal their shine or their thunder. Quite honestly, I invite you at a table because you have something that I need. And I want you to be prosperous in it as well. So I think that also comes from my mother. My mom used to always say to me, it's not enough for you to be successful, Raegan. Your success is not your own. Who else are you helping along the way? And again, that started a long time ago with my mom. I'm at a very young age. And I think I have taken that value system into work. And I think that absolutely helps in terms of the reputation that I have in terms of being ethical and paying you what I say I'm going to pay you. But also too, it really goes into a place of me appreciating the people that are around me and appreciating the different gifts and talents that they have. So I think in terms of the intangibles that have helped me to get where I'm at, I think that probably is definitely at the top of the list, those three things.
My mom always told us, lose the battles, win the war, but win it with pride. And, that is a skill that I feel like not many people in today's world necessarily understand. I think we're really accustomed to getting things very quickly. You see things on social media and they move fast. And so as somebody who has actually lived through that process, what did that feel like for you? Was that difficult? Did you have battles that you lost while you're working on winning the war? Talk us through that.
Absolutely. I would say that some of the biggest battles that I lost were the times where I absolutely refused to be exploited. I think, yes, I'm a Black woman, and I think the reality of being a woman in business in any particular field, there are a variety of isms you're going to deal with in your career: chauvinism, sexism, classism. I mean, it's just racism. It's just, right. The battles that I lost were what I consider to be the opportunities that didn't come through, but they were the ones that would not have allowed me to show up upright. Something about me was going to have to be diminished, whether it was the way I was talked to verbally, whether it was, well, you're not really going to get paid what's on that contract, or yes, give us all of your ideas, but by no means do you put your name on it. I don't do that. And so I think that those battles that I lost were actually the ones that were building the foundation for how I wanted anybody to interact with me as a professional. It's amazing how the things that don't happen are actually setting up how you're already, even if you're not aware of it, you're already determining how you're going to be a working professional by what you say no to.
Brilliant.
And over time and over years, it started to, oh, okay, that's why I don't agree with this, or I said no to that, because you simply can't go to bed at night and be peaceful having been interacted with in that way off of your gift. And I think that those were the things that set up how I'm going to be respected in business, because that's not something that just happens with the snap of a finger. You have to put down some boundaries and make it clear. And if people do not attune themselves to that, you have to get up from the table. And so that's another thing that I got from those battles. I learned how to peacefully get up from the table. Sometimes we call it the universe has abundance available to you. And I do believe that, but you have to know that everything that looks abundant may not be for you. And I had to be willing to let some opportunities go, not knowing where the next one was coming from. I didn't have 5 lined up, but I knew 100% that doesn't work. And that's where I had to learn how to trust God. God is very clear on what works, do you? And will you allow yourself to stay loyal to what works for you? And again, back to the simplicity. That's my overarching theme about everything in life, simplicity. Anything that would put me in a position to be disrespected, whether it's on paper, whether it's verbally, whether it's financially, I kind of just took a stand and said no, just no. And I got more peaceful with no. So the battles actually that I lost actually helped me develop what I call my business backbone.
Beautiful. And clearly your faith is so fundamental to everything that you do, both personally and professionally. Talk to us about your faith and how you lean into your faith during the good and maybe the more challenging times.
It's interesting. I grew up around 3 faiths. I call it intersectional for Jesus. That's how I grew up. Like my mom's side of the family, they were Pentecostals, Baptist, and then my great grandmother, she was an AME, African Methodist Episcopal. So I grew up with these 3 cultures of Jesus, is what I like to tell people. I grew up with these 3 cultures, and they're all right for hysterics, but different applications of the faith, and so on and so on. But what I think I got from my faith by the time I hit an adult, faith is something that is practiced in action. And it is going to be your faith, not the faith. And my mom had kind of prepared me for that. And she said, at some point, Raegan, whatever part of this you take on, you're going to take it on. You're going to take it in. It will be nothing that is force-fed to you or demanded of you. You will arrive at it all your own. And so that is honestly what happened in my adulthood. I really got to a place of understanding that God has, this purpose for my life, and that there's also this place in there where I want to see it fruitful. It is not just you that's ambitious. I am ambitious for you because I gave it to you. And so I think one of the greatest shifts that happened probably in my late 20s, early 30s was this understanding that God was a partner in my excellence, not some person I had to go report to, and get permission. Like it really wasn't that. I want to see you thrive. And here are some of the boundaries that you need to be in, Raegan, in order to bring that to fruition. So faith became really something that became less of a thing over there. It became a lifestyle for me. Certainly not something I demanded of other people, nothing that I said, you're horrible if you're not fill in the blank. but this is how I show up as my best self in all areas of my life. And so it has really become less of a reporting mechanism, which is, I think a lot of times how various faiths are sold as a rule book. It's become essentially the place where I'm able to routinely access my best me. And that's the role that it has played, even in my professional life.
It's so beautiful to hear you articulate that, Raegan, and it's really inspiring to me personally because you're one of the most connected people, I think, to your point of view and your ethics that I've ever heard speak. So I'm very proud to hear you articulate that so clearly. What is that a relationship that you've developed over time, or is that something that you've had from a very young age?
I think when I was a teenager, I knew I would have this thing where I just knew what to do. I didn't ask my mom, when I was very close with my mother, and if you're blessed to have a really close relationship with your mom, you tell her everything, right? Literally to the day my mother passed, she knew everything. And I mean everything, right? And like scarily so, she knew everything, right? And I think even when I was in my teen years, I had this internal thing. I just knew what to do. I didn't need to go ask mama, what do I do? No, Raegan, do this. I didn't really understand that spiritual connection was really a part of me at 16 until I got to my late 20s. And I was like, how do I just know that doesn't work for me? Or this is a great decision, or it kind of is my guiding force, but I have to get quiet to listen to it and not be afraid of what my spiritual leaning is regarding something. It either takes me to something, helps me work out something, or it helps me to get up and move on to the next thing. And that very much has been a part of my life, literally since I was a teenager, but I don't think I really recognized it as much until my late 20s. And I certainly didn't appreciate it until my 30s when I faced a lot of challenges. I didn't appreciate the strength of it, until I got in my 30s.
So in a social first world, I feel like so many of our careers and our personal lives look so perfect and so linear. And we all know that that's not true. We all face real setbacks and challenges that, really, give us the opportunity to persevere and reach our full potential, but it's not perfect. Yeah. So I'd love to hear from you, and I know our viewers would as well, is what has been your biggest personal or professional setback that you had to overcome to now be the person you are today, which is amazing?
It has nothing to do with my professional life. My greatest challenge happened in my early 30s when my mom got sick from colon cancer. And she got diagnosed Easter weekend, called and told me. By July 11th, she was gone. I literally was with her when she passed, in the same hospital where she had given birth to me. And I tell people all the time, like, there are parts of that I'm finally writing about because I feel a bit more stable to write about that. There is no greater understanding of your feminine power, your legacy as a daughter, than to hold your mother while she goes and she knows you're there. And this is happening way early than either one of you had planned for. And I remember one of the last things I said to my mom in her ear, because I said to her, I'm going to be okay, I promise. Because we had talked about that, because she knew I look like my mother. I'm like her doppelganger. Like it's like, we're so similar. Like even people, even my voice has changed over time. And my timbre, my voice is more like my mother's. And I think that started it. Within a month after my mom passed, I wound up getting really ill. They didn't know what was going on with me. And probably by July, I was bedridden. And that did not change for probably about another year. And it was like having a Charlie horse all over your body. I lost 80% range of motion of my entire body. I could not even get full capacity of my lungs because they had weakened. I had what they call catastrophic muscle failure, non-specific. And when I tell you, I just remember laying in the ER and thinking, are we serious right now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, my life is sort of a sitcom, rom-com in my head. So, I mean, I crack jokes at the most inappropriate time. And I sort of were looking at the nurse thinking, so this is what we're doing right now. I just put her in the ground 30 days ago. Y'all can't give me nothing for this. I had them laughing and they were like, no, we don't have anything we can give you. And that probably was the hardest moment of my life. My father had passed when I was a freshman in college. He had a massive heart attack and passed my freshman year. So I was now a girl in her, early 30s with no parents alive. I hadn't gotten married. I hadn't had a child yet. All those things you think you're going to start doing in this decade, right? Gone. And it bottomed me out like nothing I could possibly, even now I'm still finding the words for it. I was as dry as a bone. I can remember asking God several times just to take me because I don't even see why I'm still here. I don't have anything to live for. I literally said that. About the 11th time, I can remember having this knowing that I was going to get better. It just wasn't going to happen immediately. I defied every doctor. They call me the walking miracle to this day. I wasn't even supposed to have full capacity of my lungs anymore. I mean, I can remember one physical therapist and occupational therapist saying to me, we're not trying to get you back to 100. We're just trying to get back what we can. I said, this is what we're doing. You know what I mean? It was so out of body almost. And I couldn't believe it. So now I'm going to be disabled without her alive. It was just this whole ever going thing. I hit the ER so many times, I almost stroked out one time off of bad medication. It was just nonstop to the point that I was like, God, why am I even here? You can take me. It's better over there where my mom is anyway. I'd rather be with her anyway. And somewhere in the middle of that illness, I just remember knowing you're going to be fine. It's just going to take a minute. And then by the time things started to progress, eventually, I'd accumulated a lot of tumors. We had to do 2 massive surgeries. And it was actually in the first surgery, we figured out I had thyroid cancer, which is the scar. I usually don't hide it. I call it my love tap from God. And every morning when I look in the mirror, at some point it'll disappear, but I actually like looking at it. And I had started teaching and making that transition into academia. That was always the plan. Obviously, my mom getting sick and me getting sick kind of threw it off, by a few years. But I had finally started teaching, and I won't ever forget when they said, we're going to have to cut your throat open. I said, you do understand this is how I make my money, right? I was like, if you hit the wrong nerve, do you have a transplant for that? No, nothing in the throat reconnects. If it's gone, it's gone. And I remember I just looked around. And I just am I on candid camera? Am I going to get $1 million? It's I couldn't believe it. Now I'm finally teaching, and you mean to tell me you got to open this up? And if you even go the wrong millimeter, either one side of my face hangs, or I'm drooling the rest of my life, or I can't close my mouth anymore for anything, not to even drink. It was the gnarliest reality. But even in the middle of that, God was like, you're going to be fine. And it was during that surgery that they figured out I had thyroid cancer. It shocked everybody because nobody thought I actually had it. And again, this rolls out over a 5-year period of time. It doesn't happen all at once. And I'm settling up in a state at that time. I was the one that had to take on all of this stuff. I had a house, 4 storage units. It was all I was doing was either fighting to live or settling the affairs of people that were now gone. It was just not a fun time. But I think what wound up happening in that process was an understanding of what I call the Job experience. In the Bible, there's the book of Job. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it, but Job is doing very well in his life, and then everything goes away, and it takes a long time before God restores back. And I remember somewhere in there, God kind of said to me, you do understand nothing new happens under the sun. What you have read about, I allow in the world. And it was the most humbling moment of my life. You're never going to escape lifing on you. You know what I mean? It always comes at the most inopportune time. I've had friends that have had sick children, or special needs children, or I got pregnant quicker than I thought I was going to, and now I can't go back to work right away, right? And I had put all this time into a career. And there are so many different ways that well-intentioned plans get off track. And that for me is where my faith came in. And again, I understood that God is a partner in the success of my life holistically. And maybe this is where your life is right now, but this is not always going to be your life. And I just had to lean into it. I tell people this all the time, and I've talked to people that over time have gone through long-term illness like I did. You have got to stop fighting that it's here. You're going to have to lean into it and accept it. I know that sounds crazy to people because we live in kind of this place of, if I think it can go away, it will. I'm not saying don't have faith. I'm not saying don't speak positively. Somewhere in this, you've got to get okay that something broke. You got to accept it before you can fight it. And, the same thing with the divorce. I've had a few friends that got divorces. At some point, you have to realize I'm actually getting divorced. Oh my goodness, right? The minute you can accept it and the complete devastation of whatever it is you have to accept, then you can start fighting it in a way that you can sustain it and sustain that fight with endurance over time. The minute I accepted I could not barely walk, I could barely breathe some days, all these other things that had happened. At this point, it's financially devastating. I had golden health insurance, but you find that depending upon what type of illness you're having, they may not cover what you really need to get well. I hadn't gotten Aflac yet, as an example, right? Not that I didn't think I needed it, but I didn't think at 33, 34, we're going to be sitting here, right? I didn't think right then I was going to need it. So, and you just kind of start to understand the limitations of everything when life starts lifing on you, as I like to say. And throughout that time, I just had to remind myself, God has a plan. You already know you're going to be a professor. I knew it. This may just have to be the road to get you there. And so I kind of just had to lean into the unknown. I just had to lean into the unknown. I love a checklist. I'm type A I love a good checklist. Right? I love a good checklist. A checklist wasn't going to get me through this. Patience.
Wow.
Got me through it. Patience and faith.
Well, Raegan, we have to pause to say this to you. You are such a gift. The more time that we spend with you and get to know you better, you're such a gift, and you carry forward the legacy of your parents so beautifully. So we're so proud of you. We are. And I think there's so many people over the last few years and every day that deal with illness and difficulty. So thank you so much for sharing that. I would love to hear how that informs the way that you live your life today.
I literally just had a talk yesterday, and I said to someone, identifying your life purpose is essential, because I do not believe you pick it. I believe it's been here since you got here. Your job is to uncover it. And some of us were fortunate enough to know it when we were younger. Some people had parents that saw it, right? Or a friend that said, hey, but many people figure it out over time. Right. We now live in a time and in a culture that even has conversations about life purpose. You didn't hear that, 50 years ago. And so there's a privilege in that as well. And I think that the thing that I always had, my mother used to say, I had righteous indignation. She used to say that to me. Look at Raegan's face. She's angry. We'd be watching the news and I'd be like, I'm 13 years old and I'm like, why does she have to talk to him about that? It was just, my mom said I had these one-liners, and my mom's like, that kid has been here before. My mom's like, she's not 13, she's 33. My mom used to say that all the time. I'm 20 years older than what I actually am. And from the beginning, I didn't know it until after I got well. Cancer's not there. I literally have full use of everything, lungs, voice, body, everything. I had always had this thing about the holistic health of women. I just didn't have the language for it. I had a thing about working moms because my mom was a working mom. I had a thing about when a woman, my mom never had a female doctor until she had cancer. I even remember when I got my first female gynae. I've only had female gynaes. And my mom said, Raegan, wow. Whoa. You know what I mean? I just had a thing about having an option that was better suited for me. I had a thing about women and pay equity. oh my God, I had to think about that as far back as the first time I saw the movie Working Girl, right? Or the first time that they talked about some of the stuff in this television show that I loved growing up called A Different World and Living Single. Those were my first instances of Sex in the City, to bring it forward. Those were my first instances. And I had a thing about a woman's place in the home. You know, I had a thing with all of these different things that we live through over the course of a life as a woman. We ride one heck of a roller coaster from beginning to end. Whether we're Black, whether we're Hispanic, whether we're rich, whether we're poor, it is just one of the unspoken journeys that we have, right? And I had this thing about us having a better quality of life as we move through all these different transitions. I had a thing about access to healthcare, quality healthcare. I had a thing about informed healthcare. I had a thing about a lot of things pertaining to women. And when I look back at my life, it was the women who got me. I mean, I remember being 7, 8, 9 years old and talking to a teacher, having a real conversation, and me going home and telling my mom, and my mom stirring a pot. She talked to you about that? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, women would just talk to me about everything. I mean, my grandmother. And my mom was like, Raegan, I've never even heard her talk about that. Keep talking. I want to go in there and ask her about that. I want to hear some more. Like, you know, seriously. And I never knew until I got really into my illness, and now I've got all these doctors around me. I have this gift for people being able to tell me who they really are, what's really bothering them. It does not matter what race they are, what age they are. If I say, how are you doing? I will get a real answer in the middle of Target. Do you know? I don't know. And after I got ill and after I got well, you know, it was very clear to me that is your area. You're here to improve the lives of women, not because we don't need men. I'm a Black woman. We need strong, character-driven, loving men. If I look at it purely just from my own, you know, ethnic culture, we need that for the stability of our culture. So not in a sense that we don't need men, but a healthier, holistic woman is better able to show up in all these different areas of her life. What can I do to make that happen for all of us? And it's been with me my whole life. And when I got sick and I was routinely surrounded by these women doctors, there are times I'm sick as a dog and I'm in there encouraging them. And I remember literally when it was time for me to start applying to my PhD, God said it to me clear as day. Don't you see, it's been with you all along. I've allowed you to be blessed by the very community you're going to serve. You just didn't know that's what I was doing. And so I think that's why purpose identification is so important, because it sets up where you are to serve. You know what I mean? Even your career is a service. It's not just a job. It's a place where you get to be a part of the community of people that move something forward. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not the only one. I'm one of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of women around the world that are trying to improve the lives of women. But that really is how it showed up for me. It was the illness that really everything started clicking, and it had been there all along. I just didn't see it as clearly. And so I don't think without me, ironically, without me having been ill as long as I was, I probably would not have been as bold about it, nor as confident in it. And at some point, you're going to have to get confident in the purpose.
Right, right. I love that. So Raegan, so many successful people, especially women, we live with that inner critic. It just pops up every now and then, or maybe for some people frequently. We have that inner critic, that voice in our head that's telling us we're not capable, or we're not the best at what we do, or, you know, the imposter syndrome that comes with the inner critic. Do you have an inner critic? And if so, how do you shut her up?
Oh my goodness. I have braces right now, right? I was supposed to get these right before I got sick. So this is coming obviously some years later. And I remember thinking, who's going to let me do that with this metal in my mouth? Like, I mean, I literally sometimes even to this day will go, okay, Raegan, like, you know, it's okay. You know, I have to talk to myself. I think, my inner critic is perfectionist. I call her perfectionista. Everything's got to be right. Everything's got to be sitting in the right place. You've got to say it the right way. You've got to, you know, and she doesn't allow me to relax as much as I should enjoy. the ability to. And so the way that I have learned over time to silence her in those inopportune moments, because perfectionista helps me sometimes with the work I do, right? I'll go back and look at something 5 times, or I'll think something, more multidimensional and arrive at better outcomes. But she also has the ability, if I flip the coin, to actually steal joy from a moment or steal excitement. So the way that I've had to learn how to talk to perfectionista is I literally sometimes will say to her, I need you to be quiet right now. You're not helping, you're hindering. You're not helping, you're hindering. Sometimes I will even say it out loud. You're not helping, you're hindering. And, and it's, and then quietly it will start to, because really you have to stop listening to perfectionista in that moment. I have to pull myself back from that. So I literally do have a conversation with her and tell her right now, you're not helping, you're hindering. And that silences it. It has taken practice, years of practice, but I've kind of gotten her in that place. And I think part of it is that even for me right now, like we're emerging from a pandemic, right? In a normal situation, I would have had a makeup artist over here. We would have had like the studio lights up in the living room. Like I would have been on a set, like, cause I got friends, I can get that done. And so part of me wasn't even going to allow myself to do this podcast right now until I could get my makeup artist Grace here from Atlanta and get all my little lightning boom people down the street from the thing and get everything like I wanted it, But something said, well, Raegan, right now you're just going to have to keep showing up as yourself. That really has been my last 2 years in particular. I stopped allowing my desire for perfection to keep me from pursuing things that come along. And I just had to say, well, if they offered it to you right here, where you are right here is enough. I know you want to be more, Raegan, right here is enough. And so that's what I've had to do. Just keep showing up as yourself. I would have loved to do this without the braces. Well, they're there. So we're just going to have to, right? They're there. We're just going to have to keep that thing moving and we're just going to have to do it, and that has been my way of allowing myself to enjoy opportunities. Show up as you are.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things that has come from COVID is we all have braces, whatever they are. Everybody has that stuff. We've shown up sick or a kid jumps on your lap or, you have a mental health breakdown because we've been faced with all the crazy stuff we've been faced with. That humanity that's come through this time has been hopefully something that will stick around and we can all lose a little bit of that. I hear you on the perfectionism thing. I totally hear you on it. It's a tough thing to live with. It's a double-edged sword. Perfectionist is a double-edged sword. I would love to hear from you. You're such an observer in hearing how you speak. You observe yourself, you observe the world around you. You're constantly intaking information and you can see in your work that you look at these macro and micro trends. How did you develop that from a really young age? You're just watching and intaking and you do it so beautifully and you're even capable of doing it for yourself, which I think is an incredibly valuable and rare quality. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It's so interesting. I've never had somebody describe it as macro and micro, but that actually is exactly what it is. And that is why I was good at school. I think some people forget that sometimes education is not about the ability to learn. It's the ability to extrapolate and compartmentalize. And my brain just knew how to do that from the beginning. I even remember a 3rd grade teacher saying to my mother, Miss Rayner, I will never forget her, Sue Rayner. She said to my mother, what's interesting about Raegan, she reads on a 5th, almost 6th grade level. She has this enormous ability to remember something you said to her in August. It's now March. She said, I don't. And then not only can she remember it, she can figure out how to essentially correlate it to something you just said in real time. She says, sometimes when she talks, I just stare at her. I don't even, where does she get that from? And my mom would say, God and me. So my mom would say, God and me, because my mom is even smarter than me and just never had the same types of opportunities or the same type of world to live in for it to come alive, really. And I think for me, that macro level is a part of the purpose. As women, we don't live in this one, category. We live in 6 or 7 at one time in 24 hours. And it requires a more, specific look Sometimes we got to back all the way up and look at all the different, components that are going into a decision. As women, we operate macro and micro every day. So that's the only way my brain knows how to work. And I think that in that you find solutions, you find allies, you find a different way of helping people to understand different types of life culture that you may experience. And that for me is the most exciting part of my brain, honestly. I love the ability that I have to see different lived experiences and understand them. It's not enough for me to poke at something and say, oh, that's bad. How did it get that way?
Right.
I tell my students all the time, it's not the what, it's the why. The why is where the sauce is. If all you focus on is the what, you will not be effective in media. You've got to get obsessed and passionate about the why. The why will tell you everything. And that's what I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with the why of us as people and as women, because I think that's where we find an opportunity to build a better society, is the why.
Raegan, I would love to go back to this idea of abundance, because I think one of your superpowers is living life and making professional decisions, business decisions through more of an abundant mindset versus scarcity, which we so often fall into. And then we inherit situations or business partnerships that aren't good for us emotionally, financially, professionally, because we are showing up through a lens of scarcity versus this abundant mindset. So can you help give the viewers and me personally the confidence to make wiser choices, the confidence that living life and making business decisions through an abundant mindset is the right path? Help us, give us some confidence and faith in that, please.
It's interesting. When people ask me, I've had a very great year in spite of Rona. This has really been like, I wake up some days, did we really just do this like in a pair of sweatpants, and just listening to Jimmy Buffett? Did we really just, you know what I mean? And I mean, all I've been listening to is Motown and, 90s R&B. Like, did we really just pull this off in like an Adidas sweatsuit? Did we really, right? And I'll be honest with you. An abundant mindset, I really don't believe is about abundance. It's finding a way to get it done. And, it's interesting. People think about opportunities and they pluralize it. Don't get me wrong. Opportunity is there. An abundant mindset really starts with innovation. I'm not going to be able to do it like this. I'm not going to be able to do it like that. Those are known elements. This is where it is. Now, how can I get it done? And that's where you feel like a lifting, because it doesn't feel like a complete, oh, it's not possible. It feels like, okay, we know this doesn't work and this doesn't work. Now, how can we make it work? That starts like an idea. That sounds like a challenge, a passion. Let me find a different way to do it. So I really believe that for the person, it starts with knowing the elements that aren't working for you, even in business. Okay, now how could I create something that will work for me? For the person on the receiving end of these new ideas or opportunities, it's about you releasing the control that it can only be done one way. I think a lot of what we're seeing in the world right now, we're seeing everyday men and women, all of us, even all of us right here, we're coming up with ideas to effectuate the end game. And then we're being fortunate enough to run into people that are willing to say, well, I guess we can try that. I've never done it before, but okay. Abundance works on both sides. It's not only the person that creates the idea, it's being a business owner or a manager that can receive a different way of doing it. That's how we keep abundance moving. It's not enough if I give you the idea. You've got to be willing to try it. And I think that is really, truly what the abundance narrative is about. And one of the things I've been really good at in the last 2 years, and it's a combination of maturity, spiritual discernment, knowing who needs what. I'm very good now at knowing who needs what I inherently am rich in, because I can see you don't have it. I'm very good at that. I can sniff it out like a bloodhound. And rather than talk to you right then, I'll go draft a proposal. I will do my homework. Can I talk to you for a second? What are you in need of? And I already halfway know that I'm solving half of your problem. in talking to you, I get the other half. You may not have even had the opportunity to vocalize just yet. So I've gotten abundance narrative for the person. You have got to get unafraid of approaching people. One of the things I see a lot, even in my students or even other people around me, they're scared to approach people for what? They've got a problem. You might have a solution. That's really what abundance narrative is about. If every problem already had a solution, we wouldn't need anything else. You've got companies, brands, people, universities, even the program that I'm going into. Why did I select that program out of the handful of programs I wanted to apply to? Because they have a passion for health communication. And they need more women of color or people of color to focus on that as a part of, continuing out your doctoral studies. I looked for who had what I'm already rich in. And to me, that's where the abundance becomes easier to access, like positive outcomes. It's not just if you have the idea, who needs it? Who's in need of what you have? Nothing that I have to go off and create a whole new theory set for. I already lived this, right? And in many ways, that's what the abundance narrative is about on the flip side. It is not you going out here and creating 10, 20 new talents. It's you continually drilling down on the 3 you have. And it's like narrow and broad at the same time. That, to me, is how you can most effectively operate in abundance and have better outcomes when you're approaching people. And just know that if that person says no, believe me, there are 2 or 3 yeses right behind it. I'm a living witness. There are 2 or 3 right behind it. Sometimes they will point you to who needs it. Oh, well, I really, but who I do know? I'm going to introduce you to. Let me see if I can. Really, people love people that are looking for solutions that make sense. And that's really what I think the abundance narrative is about. You have to be unafraid of approaching people.
That's such a beautiful way to articulate it, Raegan, because I think so many people take their gifts for granted and then they have a sense of shyness around sharing them with people and approaching them proactively and saying, hey, I think I'm good at this. I think I could offer you this. So what great advice for, people in general, but specifically, I think a lot of women struggle with that. So I'm interested in your point of view on this because I know we're coming through a time where a lot of women have had a difficult time. How do you define, you've referenced numbers of times, the holistic health of women? What is that?
It's multidimensional. And it is about an internal and an external look at the same time. It is about where am I as a being? Where am I mentally, physically, spiritually? Literally, what is the quality of my literal health, right? It is about what is my purpose? Again, I don't think we're drilling that enough. And that is not because I don't think women are interested in their purpose. I don't believe sometimes as a society, we've given women the divine right to explore what that is for you. I think it does also involve, where are you financially? That kind of sits in the middle. That financial thing kind of sits in the middle between where you are and how you experience your community and your society. It is about policy. What are we subject to as women at this season of time? Whether everything from voting rights all the way to reducing the age of colon cancer screenings. I remember when it was time for me to go get a colon cancer screen, I had to drill that thing down before they would cover it. And the only reason they chose to cover it is because I had a grandfather and a mother who passed from it. 55 is too high. I tell people all the time, and so what are we subject to as women in terms of health policy or voting or anything else politically? In the season of time that we are alive and we exist in our contemporary society, it is also a look at what is the representation of media at that time. Literally, when you look out into the world, what do you see is a storyline about women from all walks of life, including BIPOC women? What is the story, the narrative? Is it stereotypical or is it more documentary? Is it reflectional or is it trying to promote a different? Again, these are just all things to consider. And last but certainly not least, it does come down to community. What is the atmosphere of women among women, in a given time period? I think once you pull all those things together, you have a more accurate picture of what is the holistic health of a woman, because we take all of that into how we raise our children, how we partner, how we marry, how we live, what charities we give to. It's all telling a story about where we are. And I think we have to start looking at that on a micro level individually, and then look at it on a mass level at a particular demographic of women. And in that, we find an understanding of what is the holistic health of women. So for all these women, I literally just said this yesterday, there's this thinking that all women have had time to do deep reflective thought during COVID. Are you serious? Like she's been the nanny, Bozo the clown. She's been cleaning the house. She's been, Alice in the diner cooking. I mean, she is tired. Like, do you understand? I mean, most women are exhausted right now. Please open the school. Please open the school. I mean, she can't even get the 8 hours of redemption she was entitled to before COVID. She's not had time to do deep, profound thinking about her life. She is trying to, let me make it again tomorrow. I'm out on the patio. You don't talk to me for 2 hours. Honey, get them back in there. They're not supposed to be out here right now. Like, seriously, I mean, and so I think the ending of the pandemic is going to finally be more of a female liberation that women have not had. And even if you're not married or you're not, quote unquote, a mom, you might have been part of a care team for your community. I knew of one friend of mine, she had taken on babysitting 5 kids to give the moms a break for 3 hours a day. And so maybe she's not a mother, but she was taking that on during COVID, feeding them, talking to them. She had started running errands for some of the other moms, going to the grocery store, all these different things to help them keep their homes. She's tired. I had another friend of mine who moved her parents in her house. And they were going through some different health issues. And this is while she's got a son in her house herself. So she's running all of it, So I think overall women, predominantly are exhausted right now. And so I think that this time of the world reopening, overall, women are finally going to get a break to think about what has gone on with them in the last year. They're going to need rest. A vacation, for goodness sake, a therapist. Some women have lost their job as a result of pandemic. I know of women who lost their job because they could not participate at the same level because now I'm home with all of my children. So I think that we're going to see some disturbing data. We've already seen it, the millions of jobs that have gotten lost during the pandemic here in the United States. But I think it's going to proliferate around the world and even in third world countries. And I think that this is actually going to be a time for us as a community of women to take it upon yourself to find other women and ask them, how are you really? Because if we're not careful, we're going to lose some of the gains that we fought so hard for in the last, 25 to 30 years. And I'm already seeing it out of everyday women. I mean this, everyday women, I'm seeing it already. And I feel like it's the thing we're not talking about. So I feel even more impassioned in the work I'm doing right now because I do have the energy and the opportunity to maintain some stability for certain types of issues and things for women in my community of women. And I think that is something we all need to take to heart. It doesn't matter what field you're a part of. It doesn't matter if you work in a daycare or the post office. I really don't care. You need to take it upon yourself to find some women and ask them, how are you really doing? Because I think we have an opportunity to serve one another one-on-one right now in a way that I don't think we've seen in a very long time.
So Raegan, we always end our podcast with one single question, and that is, what is possible?
I believe you are possible. Me, you, and anybody else listening to this. The possibility is not what's outside of you. It's about figuring out a way to pull out what's in you. You are what's possible. That has been the biggest lesson I've learned in probably the hardest 7 years of my life that I didn't even know if I was going to survive it at a point. But what I figured out is that every time I needed something, I had to go in and find it. That's the irony. Every time I needed just enough patience to get through the end of the day, I had to believe I could access it. You know what I mean? I had to believe that I could find the resource that I needed. What is possible is you, not the performative you, not the you have on Instagram, not the you that looks like everything is fine. No, the real you is what's possible. And I think after the absolutely bat crazy year that we've had due to COVID, that's the bare minimum gift you should give yourself. Be you. That's all any of us have time for anymore. God forbid we go back to another lockdown. I'm hoping that does not happen for us in the US. I would like to think that a lot of people, especially women, would want to know, I was me. If nothing else fails, I was me in this life. So that's what's possible. You.
I'm certain, although you will be a doctor in short order, you were born Dr. Raegan Burden. I agree with your mom. You just are such a gift and a force to be reckoned with, and we're so excited to watch your career unfold. I've watched you grace stages. You're super powerful. We thank you so much for spending your precious time with us today, and we're so excited to see all the things that you accomplish and are lucky to be in your circle. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Raegan. You're amazing.